Hi there, it's me, Skye Schooley, a staff writer with business.com, and congratulations, you made it to the end of 2021. The past year taught us anything, it is that employers and employees place a very high importance on company culture. So today I'm joined by Melissa Lopez, the CEO of Onyx Offsites Trainings, to talk about what sort of workforce trends we can anticipate for 2022 and how employers can set up for success in maintaining a great company culture. Hi, Melissa. Thank you so much for being here today to speak with me about how employers can set up for success for the new year, primarily in regards to company culture. What sort of workforce trends do you anticipate will be key drivers for company culture in 2022?
Thanks, Skye. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you on this. I think that there's probably a handful of different trends that we see that will be coming through for company culture. One of the most important ones would be mental health and wellness. I think that organizations are going to put forth more effort towards investing time, money, different initiatives to help foster positive mental health and wellness in the workforce, especially like after this pandemic. Obviously, we're still kind of in it a little bit, but I do think that the employers, it's going to be really important for them to put perks for employees to take advantage of that are going to cater to resiliency, healthier eating habits, meditation, moving, stretching, all in the form of, being able to have those types of programs directly from the employer, and then stipends maybe offered to employees to help invest in the mental, physical, and emotional well-beings. Because I think that we've experienced ourselves within my company, as well as companies that we work with, we're witnessing a change in mindset that was brought on through this pandemic. And I think companies are going to need to focus on employees' mental health so they can confront any new difficulties that might lie ahead. Another area, and this is huge right now, you can kind of see how you and I are working here too, is the hybrid work environments. We're going to see companies working on more or less redefining what that relationship between employer and in the workplace looks like, because that really defines what your culture is. And I think that we've learned over the past couple of years that we can offer as an employer a more flexible work schedule, and it permits employees to take the opportunity to either work fully remote. Sometimes they can work in the office versus, in other days they can work hybrid. And I think that companies have to have a stronger, more structured framework in place and be able to identify how this feeds into their culture. Because there is a lot of employees, if you're working remotely, there's that inability sometimes to disconnect from what you're doing, and drawing that line between the work hours and home hours has become a little bit blurred. And so companies are really going to have to say, establishing that within their culture to be able to allow employees to have that breathing room is going to be really important. Gosh, I'm trying to think. Adaptability is going to be a really big area. Adapting to new behavioral patterns and expectations for employees of their roles and their responsibilities within their various jobs in the workplace, because employers are really requiring and expecting employees to be more versatile and flexible, as well as adaptable to the continuously changing conditions within this post-pandemic workforce. And then I would say that the last area, and I see this a lot from my previous work experience to my existing company, is just the utilization of automation and more virtual assistant utilization. We've all become so reliant upon technology. And when you put a computer screen between yourself and your staff, there's a disconnect within that culture. And sometimes, people might feel a little bit siloed, but yet we really need to, as employers, lean into the technology, because it's going to continue to change the role of the employee. It's going to have more focus on, the companies will have more focus on investments with AI, automation, using virtual assistants to manage very task-driven and mundane responsibilities. So that will allow the employees to be a lot more focused on, strategic initiatives and being able to really connect And whether it be, in an office environment or within utilization of the technology, be able to use the technology to reach out to their co-workers and collaborate, and be able to use systems like Slack, where communication will be really important.
Great. So I think you had actually already kind of touched on some of these, but what sort of strategies can employers use to start the new year with a strong company culture?
I think one of the most important ones, and I've been doing it a lot in our company as well, is really creating a culture of accountability. I think that companies need to strive to make their goals and the progress against those goals more visible within the organization, and reinforcing that within the culture to empathize with accountability. I think that leaders need to talk about the accountability within their workforce. They need to share ideas. They need to come to a common consensus of what accountability means within their team, and they need to set that as an organizational goal. And I think in order to do this, organizations need to set meaningful goals with measurable metrics, and there has to be no room for ambiguity, because I think a lot of the times we kind of see that. And I think that will empower teams. They'll be able to take ownership and responsibility of their contributions within an organization. They can stay focused on their priorities. They can take initiative, and they'll be able to ultimately perform. And I think that, by shifting into a constructive accountability, it requires a culture change within some teams in some different organizations. But for leaders and managers, ultimately, if you're able to make that shift, that we'll be able to see that the results are really well worth the effort. Again, kind of like feeding off of what I had said previously too, I think another strategy is really embracing flexibility within the corporate culture. And that's really more like developing a virtual business culture. And, it needs to be able to say, like, some people are working in office, or some people are working fully remote, some people are hybrid. And being able to recognize that flexibility, and companies need to implement like ongoing continuous initiatives through the course of the year that allows that corporate culture to be alive in the virtual space as well as within the office. And really, companies need to invest time, invest resources to help foster that employee engagement. It can be like through virtual team building activities, trainings, virtual happy hours, whatever it is that really fits within the culture of that organization. Establishing and sharing your company vision and your values is really important too. So, we all as business leaders put together our strategies for the year, and we have a lot of meetings, but to get the team involved in that, and then be able to, once you have that plan in place, have transparency of what that 1 year, what that 3-year business plan looks like, what's the long-term vision of the organization, and allowing the staff to recognize their contributions into that. Because I think that employees really need to believe in the company that they're working for. They need to share in the same values, and they need to see those values played out consistently within the organization. And then, I think that the last area here too, from a strategic perspective, and I see a lot of companies struggling with this right now, and it's really going to be a really core focus for 2022, is on recruitment and retention strategies. I think, new employee recruitment is going to become really focused on skill. And I think it's going to be less important the geographical location of an employee, because, companies want to bring in the right talent. They want to find a way for them to work regardless of location. And now this opportunity of hybrid and remote working environments will lend itself to a lot of organizations. That being said, I also think employee retention strategies will have to be enhanced to keep the talent that companies have, because that competitive environment is going to really allow potential poaching, or, you've got to really protect the staff that you have. And so that's really where I feel it's going to be important for companies to say, what's going to work well for us? What type of ongoing continuous efforts will we be able to put in place for our existing employees, as well as what strategies are we using to bring in the right talent that will fit within our culture of the organization.
Great insight. So are there any potential challenges you think that businesses might face in regards to company culture in the new year?
I think there's a lot of challenges. I think that ultimately, I think the biggest one that we all companies face is really the team connectivity. You know, what that communication looks like, being able to really recognize performance for your employees. I think that you know, some individuals that or people within companies are feeling siloed. They feel unrecognized. They feel unappreciated. And I think that companies really need to really lean in to get creative and execute various ways to share employee successes, you know, both with that individual as well as throughout the organization. And I also think that companies need to invest their energy towards identifying different team building initiatives that can really effectively carry out in all different channels of modalities of how your workplace is laid out, because that really will kind of go back to foster that connection, foster that culture, be able to promote honest and transparent communication. The other area too, where I feel is incredibly important is just for employee satisfaction, employee fulfillment. You know, keeping those employees happy is ultimately going to lead to job satisfaction. And, you know, kind of mentioned it before, you know, staffing, recruitment, such a challenge right now. I mean, like doesn't matter what industry, everybody's facing this. And, you know, when team members leave that organization, it usually negatively impacts the culture. And that becomes a huge challenge for any company, because what it does is it creates more work for the employees that are staying, especially knowing how time sensitive and long it takes to try and recruit the new talent into that organization. And then you have to get that new talent trained up. You need to make certain that they fit within that culture. And, you know, for companies who really want to have a strong culture, you know, you want to ensure that everybody's on the same page, and it just takes time. And so I think that that is going to continue to be a big challenge for a lot of companies. So it's just leaning into it and having the plan in place prior to. And then again, I really feel like if it always ladders within a company. You know, I think employees have to believe that that companies are practicing what they preach. And going back to the values of an organization, if you can see the management and the leadership team living and carrying out those values, it will really kind of progress through the rest of the company, and it will ultimately help the business as a whole. And you'll start to see positive reinforcements, whether you're working with clients or you're working with specific customers. The job satisfaction of your employees will be carried out through customer service, and you'll start to see happy customers, happy clients, and you know that helps in the growth of those existing relationships and retention of those existing relationships.
Great. So I think you had already kind of touched on this, on how businesses can overcome these challenges. You had mentioned have a plan in place, start by leadership. Are there any other type of strategies that you recommend for businesses to just help them overcome these?
I think that the most important thing is solidifying your business plan. You know, get your budgets in place. You need to talk to your team. You need to hear what they have to say, and you got to utilize them as advisors within your organization. A lot of companies, you know, they will put things in place like a town hall meeting. They'll say, we want to hear your input, and then they'll take that input and they'll do nothing with it. And it's really detrimental. And if anything, it causes more struggles within the organization versus saying, okay, we've heard what you had to say, and here are some different solutions that we are going to be doing, and show them that you're executing upon it. Don't just use the words mean nothing. And I mean, I remember years ago where I would work at different companies, and, you know, they would say, okay, we have this vision, and, you know, this was all incorporated based upon what our employees have shared, and it was never executed upon. So if you have a strategy or you have something in play, you have to execute upon it. You have to be able to then show it to your team and say, here is what we're doing, and ask for continuous communication back. Always make certain that that line is both ways, and you're not talking to them, you're talking with them.
So before we wrap this up here today, did you have any final advice for how companies can just start the new year strong in general?
Most importantly would be to, listen to your employees' needs, and solidifying your business plan. Put a performance recognition and incentive plan in place for all your team members. A lot of companies, they are looking at it from just a sales perspective, and not just the sales team should be able to celebrate, whether it be monetarily or through different types of team incentive or activities. Let them see that their active contributions towards strategic and financial goals of the companies will reward them as well. I also think that, at the end of the day, all companies need to identify ways and execute upon them to be able to recognize it's people, and it's not an organization as a whole that drives culture. And, recognizing that a company is only as successful as the team that is made up of them, because each of those team members provide such a critical component. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. And as people or managers, leaders within this workforce, they really need to put that employee first. We're all kind of dealing with what the past 2 years of this pandemic has brought upon us. And, our mindsets have been changing. Our resiliency has been decreased. And I strive for it myself. And I really have to remind myself that to continuously be encouraging people to speak up and to be able to address, like, what are your needs, and be able to have conversations with your customers, and understand what their needs are, to create a continuous back and forth dialogue between all parties. And I think that you will see success, and you'll see retention, and you'll see growth.
Awesome. Well, that was all that we had for today. Melissa, thank you so much for joining me.
You bet. I appreciate it.